What's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Sega's renewed focus and how it actually needs to be real. So recently, Sega talked about their financial reports from the past year and it wasn't looking good, guys. Profits were down 70% from the previous fiscal year, and on top of that, they only made 23 million in those profits, and their road to 2020 roadmap that they had for larger earnings has completely been broken. It's in shambles right now at this point. I think investors are upset. I think the higher ups at Sega are upset. I think fans are upset when it comes to the games and their output, and we all know Sega can do much better. So let's talk about this renewed focus they said they're going to have. So they talked about doing more remasters, HD re-releases every now and then, focusing on their main IP like Yakuza, Persona, games like that, and localizing games. And that's all fine and dandy, but it's one thing that I need to tell you guys when it comes to Sega, or even companies in general. We've seen this song and dance before from companies who have upsetting reports or who do underperform. They say they're going to do one thing, but it doesn't always turn out that way, especially if something comes in and does really well, then that can take away the focus. But Sega for many years has not been doing what's best for the consumer. They've been doing just what's best for them, and what's best for them wasn't even what's best for them. It's just what they thought was best for them, because you're looking at the results at this point. Sega is nowhere near as good when it comes to game output as their IPs say. At least with Capcom, you can see that they're doing their thing with Resident Evil and also Monster Hunter and other franchises that they do have. But Sega isn't even on that level, and people complain about Capcom all the time. Sega has a lot of great IPs. Sega has so many great IPs. I'm wondering why this even happened in the first place, considering all the amazing IPs that they have. And yes, they could get these IPs modernized, they can get these IPs to sell. It's all about marketing, and it's all about how you structure your game. There's ways to do it. Heck, we saw that with Capcom. Monster Hunter had never been a franchise that sells 10 million units, and guess what? Monster Hunter sold 10 million units with Monster Hunter World. So there's always a way. Not saying it's easy or it's practical or everyone can do it, and obviously that is a case to where it's very rare with this one here, but at the same time, I still feel that they have a lot of franchises that don't necessarily need to do 10 million, but can do millions upon millions, but they just leave them dormant, they just leave them dead, and I don't understand why they do that. So let's hope that this renewed focus, let's hope what they're saying here is actually going to come true. But I want to talk about some IPs that they do have and what they could do with them. So they have IPs like Shining Force. That is a strategy RPG that in my opinion could be right underneath Fire Emblem when it comes to sales and everything, which is millions of sales. There aren't a lot of strategy RPGs that are still around, but there is a hungering for strategy RPGs done well with modern, good looking graphics. We're not talking about the independent developers that do stuff like that, but games like XCOM, games like Valkyria Chronicles 4, games like Fire Emblem, those all do well. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, anything that can be considered kind of like the strategy RPG area, there is a market for these games because there's so few of them in a modern sense that if Shining Force actually came back, I think that that could be a franchise that could really do some damage on the market and renew Sega's confidence, renew the fans' confidence in Sega. Now they also have another IP, a game like Vanquish, for example, that is a Platinum Games developed title, and it's one of those games that kind of was like left unfinished. There's still some unfinished business in Vanquish. I think if you modernize it a bit more, okay, modernize it a bit more, you make it to where there's actual upgrades and there's more stuff that you can do within that game world, make the game a bit longer, maybe add in some co-op or multiplayer support in that style of game, put it up to 1080p 60 frames per second, because that game played so fast and it was 30. So if you modernize it, you do a couple tweaks here and there, I think that that could be a very big game for Platinum Games and also for Sega, and maybe they're working on something like that. Maybe they are working on something like that with this renewed focus that Sega is going after. I think Vanquish, for what it was, actually didn't do too bad. Obviously they wanted it to sell more, but I feel that that style of game could be really good. PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PS5, next Xbox Switch, whatever the case is, bring a game like Vanquish back. Once again, you get the consumer's confidence in you, and you don't have to break the bank with these games. That's the thing about about this. You can make good, high quality games at good amount of budgets. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to break the bank with all of these, especially when you're talking about platinum games. Now, another franchise that did well before for them was Mad World. And once again, Mad World was only on the Wii at the time that it released. It was kind of a little bit bare bones when it comes to content, but if you fleshed out that type of world and you've kind of put it out there back for the Nintendo fans so they can actually buy it this time, because as you guys know, there was a somewhat pseudo sequel, which was Anarchy Reigns, and that game necessarily didn't have the same charm that some people thought with Mad World. Mad World sold a lot more, from what I understand, than Anarchy Reigns, but Anarchy Reigns did all the different type of things. I mean, it had a single player, it had multiplayer, but the multiplayer was very weird, kind of like arena style beat 'em up. I'm not sure if that's the type of thing that you should do for that franchise. I think making that more of a co-op game would have been a much better area to go than a competitive type of fighting game. So if you bring back a Mad World and then you add some co-op in there, I think that would probably be the way to go, and bring back the really cool style of the first game more so than the second game in it. So I think that Mad World could be another franchise that they have that really kind of goes in and helps them out. Now, the last one that I want to talk about here, guys, and if I didn't mention another Sega franchise that you guys know about, trust me, there's lots of them out there. Obviously, I can't talk about every single thing, but I think that all of those would be good for the ones that I did miss, like the Crazy Taxis and all that stuff like that. Those can be brought back when it comes to HD re-releases or remasters, things like that. Now, Skies of Arcadia, this is the last one that I want to talk about before I get into some of the other things here. Skies of Arcadia is a franchise that I feel could be a huge blockbuster. And the reason why I feel that is because with today's technology and what you can do, you can make such a cool airship pirate game. There's nothing else like it out there on the market when it comes to modern games. What type of modern games have you seen with like airship pirates? You just don't see it at all. You don't see it at all. I mean, there were games like Rogue Galaxy and stuff like that back in the PS2 era and before that. But in today's day, an open world RPG like Skies of Arcadia with modern graphics, I think would stand out. I think a lot of people would love to see something like that. And even if you put in something like an ATV battle system in there and do something to where like the classic fans can get excited about it, but then you have the visual appeal to the new fans. Once again, Skies of Arcadia in a modern sense, not just a remaster or re-release. And yeah, that would be great. I've talked about how that would be great, but I really feel that there needs to be a continuation with this. They have these IPs, they have all these different stuff. You have action RPG, you have turn-based RPGs, you have shooters, Vanquish, third-person shooter, you have brawler games, or you have action games. There's just so much stuff that they have with all the different IPs that I even talked about here. The variety is so good, but I think Skies of Arcadia could be that game that really puts Sega back on the map, along with the other IPs that they said they need to focus on. Obviously, Persona needs to be a focus. Obviously, Yakuza needs to be a focus, and we'll talk about what they need to do with those as well. But here's the thing, guys. There needs to be more of a commitment to quality at Sega. I think there's some issues when it comes to the structure of Sega and how things work. Sonic games need to be better. That's one thing, because they talk about focusing on main IP. Sonic games need to be better in quality, and not just the ones that are made like Sonic Mania, stuff like that. We're talking about the main 3D Sonic games. They need to have better quality. They need to think of better themes. They need to do better for Sonic, because the last few games have not been up to a really high quality standards. And I'm not talking about quality as in like 75 on Metacritic, or it's just okay, as in really good game, as in how it was regarded back like in the Genesis days and everything like that. They need to try to get back to that. Hopefully they can. Now, multi-platform is something that Sega apparently doesn't like to hear when it comes to some of their main franchises like Yakuza and Persona, and it's pretty much counterproductive. They talk about this being a main franchise, or these being their top sellers, and then they limit them to one system and say, well, these are our biggest games, but oh, let's go ahead and limit it to this system or that system. I don't know who or why they think that's a good idea with Yakuza and with Persona, but going forward, this renewed focus, when they talked about how going forward they are going to have it to where their games come out on all platforms, make sure that actually happens, Sega. Make sure that actually happens, because yes, 2.7 million units of Persona 5 is great. Yes, your 1 million units of Yakuza across the PC and the PlayStation 4 is great, or whatever you guys sold, but I think you can do a lot more if you put it out on more systems. That only makes sense, and you can bring in more profits, so you're not limiting yourself. It's worth the extra development budget budget to put it out on more systems. Obviously, other companies within Japan like Bandai Namco, Koei Tecmo have all realized this. So the fact that you guys are realizing this in 2019 is a bit pathetic, and I think it kind of relates to why you guys are doing so poorly in comparison to the other Japanese developers profits wise. Now, it's not a bad thing. It's going to make all of these games more popular. Persona is going to become more popular than ever. Yakuza is going to become more popular than ever if you just give it some breathing room to go outside of the norm. So challenge the conventions of what you guys are already doing. Now, another thing that I think that Sega needs to do, they really don't ask the fans what they want. They really don't care too much about what the fans are even saying. You don't hear them connecting with fans, and I think that that needs to be more of a thing. That needs to be more of a thing to where they actually listen to what we're saying. Otherwise, we'd actually have a lot of these games that we've talked about to come back, but I don't think Sega listens to anybody. They just kind of do their own thing and end up getting bodied at the end of the day like they did on their profits report. So hopefully going forward in the future, Sega will listen to the fans in terms of what they want and what they can bring back, and just make sure that they do a good job on that front, because I don't think they're doing a good job on that at all. So what do you guys think about this when it comes to Sega and their renewed focus? What do you want to see from them going forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for the latest RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.